In cooperation with JobSync and their latest recruitment marketing roundtable, here's Mission Driven Recruiting. Enjoy the audio.
Good morning, everyone, or afternoon, or good evening. Like Leah likes to say, thank you for joining us today. This is the March 2024 JobSync Recruitment Roundtable featuring Bill Mussman, and today we are talking about mission-driven recruiting, and we're very excited to have him. And as usual, moderating today will be our Chief Commercial Officer, Leah Daniels, and you'll also notice our CEO, Alex Murphy, is along for the ride as well. A couple housekeeping tips and reminders. Your camera and your mic are on and ready. So that means, yay, you can participate. And we'd really like it if you did. So if you have any questions, opinions, hot takes, or if you want to say happy birthday to Albert Einstein or wish us a happy Pi Day, with both are happening right now, please feel free to jump in. We always say that there are two conversations happening, the one happening on camera and the one happening in the chat. So feel free to participate wherever you feel comfortable. If you're not comfortable jumping into the conversation, just out of the blue, raise your hand and we will do our best to find time to squeeze you into the conversation so we can make sure everybody gets a chance to talk. With that, I'm going to pass it off to Leah and we'll get things started.
Awesome. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon. Good evening. Well, it's the month of March, so there's a few important things, everyone, to keep in mind. One, nobody's time zone is correct, so nobody knows what time it is. Poor Nikesh over here, I can see him. I know he's in the UK. Second, as Alexa's mentioned, it is both Einstein's birthday and Pi Day. Bill and I were just chatting about how nerdy pi-ness is 3.14 pi, not blueberry, and how that is so appropriate, it's apropos for our friends at on Einstein's birthday. So I love that. We're gonna chat today about mission-driven recruiting. Quickly, it's a little, because I can't help myself. You guys have 30 seconds on JobSync, and then we'll jump right in. For those of you who don't know, JobSync is a hiring operations platform. So we really live between the pieces to optimize all the component pieces of your job advertising to ensure that you get more candidates, lots more candidates, to the tune of 2, 3, 4x, both in your organic efforts and in your paid for efforts. So we're really out on a mission to alleviate what we like to call the candidate drought, so that organizations and companies can get back to the business of recruiting instead of to the business of hunting. So with that, I'd like to introduce my friend, Bill Mussman. Bill and I have known each other for quite a bit of time, and I'm really excited about the organization that he has gone to and some of the work he's doing. So I'm excited to introduce him to everyone here. Bill, I'm going to have you start by giving a quick introduction about yourself and your business, and then we're going to jump into some questions.
Terrific. Well, Leah, thank you for inviting me. This is really exciting. So glad to share our story, what we're doing, and we're on a journey. So hi, everybody. My name is Bill Mussman. I am the VP of Talent Acquisition here at AmeriHealth Caritas. We are a Medicaid managed care organization. It's a $22 billion organization with about 10,000 employees. And we'll talk about, this is a mission-based organization because our members, we have about 5.5 or 6 million members across 13 states that we're providing Medicaid insurance to. So these are folks that are struggling, right? They're struggling, either they're in poverty-stricken communities, or they've got significant disabilities. So we're providing them with healthcare insurance, from that standpoint. So I have a team of about 35 people. Last year we did about 4,000 hires. So it's a large, complex, organization from that standpoint. But I've been doing this. I live in Philadelphia. I've been doing this for about 25 years, something along those lines in talent acquisition. And probably like most of you, if you're in TA, I kind of fell into it. I actually have a degree in computer science and started my career as a software programmer, consultant. And I actually spent most of my career up until I joined AmeriHealth Caritas in May in professional services, consulting, data, technology. So my introduction to healthcare and a mission-driven organization is new to me. So it's been a very interesting contrast for me as I've spent the last 10 months looking at our TA organization and how we support the mission-driven organization as we go forward. So we'll talk about that. We are definitely on a journey. I don't have it all figured out. We're definitely on a journey from that standpoint and figuring out our talent acquisition organization as we go through. So excited to share what we're doing, but it is definitely a work in progress.
So I loved it. So two things. First of all, I think it's probably the most important, of course. I did not know we had a shared first job since my original career path put me in the development team of ZoomInfo of 4 total people,
Hmm.
and which is where I quickly discovered that was not my long-term
Yeah,
mission.
I agree.
We'll
I
use your
learned
word.
early. There were a lot smarter people than
Like,
me
oh,
that were
this is not
doing
this is not
technology. So I
this is
found
not my
something else
life.
that I was better at. Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Uh, so when we started talking, one of the things that struck me is that you guys in your business very intentionally use the word mission driven and not purpose driven, which is a word we hear in the market a lot, right? There is an interchangeability that's used with those particular terms, but in reality, they're actually different. And you shared with me a little bit of how you interviewed at AmeriHealth and how that really helped define that for you. And I would love for you to start today by just giving everyone that background and helping everyone to frame up what this idea of mission driven is versus purpose driven.
Yeah, exactly. And as I was going through the interview process here, just about this time last year, knew a little bit about what Merit Health was and what it was all about. But it really got driven home. I did. I was fortunate. I was able to, as part of the process, interview with our CEO. And within the first minute of me sitting down and talking to our CEO about the job, he made a very strong point and said, "Bill, we are here. Here's our mission. Our everything that we do is driven to help eradicate poverty, and it starts with our members." And that was the essence of our conversation. For half hour, 45 minutes was really driving, what we can do from a TA perspective from that standpoint. But he made it very clear that the reason that we're here is that we want to help people just elevate them out of poverty, which was a very noble goal. And what was interesting is once I got here and I started talking to our senior executives about what we're doing from a TA perspective, inevitably every single one of them brought that brought that to the conversation. So whether I was talking to the CEO, if I was talking to our executive leaders, and now that I'm having a chance to talk to my recruiting team and the people that we're recruiting, from that standpoint, it's just embedded in everything that we do here, from that standpoint. So that to me is the first time in my career where I was really part of an organization where it wasn't about revenue, it wasn't about profit, margins. It was about our members and how we can try and support the journey that they're on, because most of them are in pretty difficult situations.
So when you're thinking about, and you're new, right? I mean, you're 10 months in to this journey, which you've got a lot of things to do, right? There's the 90-day plan that everybody's got. Like, what do I have? Who's doing what? Are these the things we even should be doing? What do we have for tech stack? What are our people? What are our processes? Right, the standard issue. You're coming out of that and you're looking forward and you're thinking about how do we succeed at bringing in the right talent, bringing in the right people, keeping them, right? Right, to retention, part of talent management. Um, where do you start? How do you evaluate? What are you thinking about?
Yeah, so probably the number one thing that I experienced in the recruiting process, and then once I was here, is the our ability to tell our story. And it starts with the EVP. So this is basic blocking and tackling, is our employee value proposition. And that was something that I struggled when I was going through the recruiting process here. What is this company all about? Obviously, it got driven home when I was going through the interview process and I met the CEO and once I got here. But when I think about what we're doing and our external properties, whether it's social media, how we go about telling those stories and elevating those so that way we can use that as an attraction mechanism for our candidates. We struggle with that, and we're still struggling with that today because we have an awesome story to tell. And we have great people who are here who are impacting the lives of people every single day, but we haven't done a very good job of being able to tell that story. So that is something that we are actively working on, and something that we're working on, whether it's our career website, our job descriptions, how we interview, the kinds of people that we want to select as we go through that, and making sure that they're also mission driven and adhere to some of those things. So that is the journey that we're on at the moment. And for me, that's something for me in my career, is newer because this is a company that unfortunately we don't promote ourselves very well, and that's something that we have to go fix.
Well, I mean, this is an EVP exercise, right? What is the employer or the employee value proposition? But I'd rather start from a place of like only up, right? Like you've only got up to go here. And you have a really interesting story to tell. It's just a matter of putting the pieces together. One of the things, though, I think is interesting in what you just said is around who you hire and the persona in which you find people. And there are lots of companies who have similar kind of ideas around personas. One of my favorite is I worked with a company many years ago who hired nurses and doctors to work in jails. And they used to say, "This is a calling. This is a calling. This is not the nurse job for everybody."
Right.
And I see Nicole here in my corner of my eye smirking because she's a nurse, or was. And so, this is the kind of thing where it's a certain kind of person who will lean into a mission like this, right? And how do you guys build that persona? How do you then interview for those traits?
Well, in a lot of cases, I would say today about 60, 65, maybe almost 70% of the people that we hire are member facing, right? So they're on the phone with them, or they are going to somebody's house to, check on them, see how they're doing, or they're going into a facility. So I think one of the things that's really important when we think about that persona is, you need to have some level of awareness of what's going on. So one of the things that we are focusing on, particularly now, we've got a much more heavier focus on it now, is hiring our members who've experienced what people are going through.
Yeah.
And that is, one of the things that we're trying to focus on and making sure as we look at our roles, how do we engage potentially folks that are going through what our members are going through so that way they can relate to what they're going through, and just making sure that we're doing that. So there's some challenges with that, right? Is how do we go access and attract that talent, go engage that talent, but then also assess it, right? Because in a lot of cases, these are folks that may not have the best resume, they may not have the best, interviewing skills, but they know what our members might be going through. And again, that's another thing that we're working on today in terms of revamping our job descriptions, working with our hiring managers to make sure that they're being unbiased when it comes to interviewing as we go through that. So again, that's partly what we're doing. We've got workforce development partners that we're now establishing so that way we can send our jobs to them and they can refer people to us. That way we are engaging them from that standpoint. So that, in essence, I'm sure if I answered your question, but in essence, kind of the profile of the kinds of people that I think are the most effective are really the ones that have experienced what our
Yeah.
members are going through.
I mean, you're hiring for empathy.
For empathy. Yeah, exactly. Right.
And that's probably a skill that a lot of hiring managers and recruiters have not had to go and figure out how to assess and bring in. But when they get it right, the impact is huge, right? I would think that that's even hard to find from like an outside vendor perspective. Like find me a vendor that assesses well for having been through it.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And I think that's where some of the techniques, whether it's behavioral interview or being able to have somebody tell you those stories as you go through that versus, let's say, the traditional, well, how many
Yeah.
years of experience do you have? And much more kind of skills oriented. So we're in very early stages of starting to take a look at some of those things and how we assess candidates and how we interview them,
Yeah.
how we measure them, right, once they're here. Because there are things I listen, you have to go make so many visits and you have to be able to document and build a service plan so that way it aligns to what somebody needs, which obviously takes a little bit of skill. You have to go present to maybe a state board or something along those lines. So there are some of those other tangible skills. But to your point, being empathetic about what our members are going through, because it's not easy. It's not easy the situations that some of our members are in.
Right. And so now that you're starting to think about this, obviously it's interesting you're talking about behavioral interviewing, which I would say was kind of like couth a few years ago, and now we're into skills based. It's just kind of almost the opposite of what you're doing. You're like, we can develop the skills if you've got the right baseline, but like the empathy's harder for us to teach. Um, how are you thinking about like the next wave, right? Like you've got the EVP piece. You're thinking about how we retrain to reassess what technologies and tools we need. What comes next in your world to make sure that I mean, you have to be thinking ahead, right? You can't be thinking only about the thing you're executing on today. That's
Yeah.
not going to work
And
for you, right?
the things that are coming next for us, and the only way I can describe it, and I said we're early in the journey, is some of the basic blocking and tackling. that, you put into a talent acquisition function, as well as, kind of aligning to some of our priorities from a business perspective. So, I'll start with the fact that, as the talent market, the labor market is shifting, we don't have a very mature and robust early careers program.
Hmm.
So whether we want to hire a nurse or a clinician, or we want to, hire, a call center rep, or maybe that does claims and data entry, those are ones that we have to go out into the marketplace and go find, versus, maybe building up that talent, from an early career perspective. So that's one of the things that we're working on as part of our journey, is establishing that. So that's, some of the basic blocking tactics. When I got here, some of it was either dormant, and we needed to, like our internship program, which we're going through, and rebuilding that for 2024 and for 2025, but also incorporating a much larger early careers program, which means we have to go and do some workforce development with our key business leaders to identify, all right, where is that talent? How do you build that talent pyramid, right? Let's build from the bottom up,
Yeah.
versus, trying to go acquire lateral talent out there and working through that. So that's just one example of something that's on our roadmap. And again, it's basic, but it's something that didn't necessarily exist here, but aligns to kind of that mission,
Yeah.
and being able to align to some of those business priorities.
Well, it's interesting, right? Because if you think about your last life, because we knew each other in your last life too, um, you need early talent. You would go to Handshake, go find developers coming right out of school, salespeople right out of school, right? There was a clean pathway for you to find this group of people that you needed.
Right.
And first of all, healthcare in and of itself is its own beast,
Right.
right? Getting nurses right out of school is very difficult in and of itself because
Yep.
everybody is hungry for them. They're like fresh meat on the bone, right? Um, but not just that for you, it's more than that, right? And in your world, I would say like for many of your positions, you're not necessarily on a must-have four-year college education, must, right? It's very different. So how are you guys finding that talent? Or are you still trying to figure that out? You think that's still part of the journey?
Yeah, it's somewhat of the journey as we go through that. I think one of the groups, in the world that I oversee and manage, we call it workforce initiatives. And that's really what, I've got a few people as part of that team, and it is going out into the marketplace and finding those community-based programs that are in those communities, and they're doing training, or they're supporting maybe from a life skills development standpoint, and trying to help them with resumes or financial planning, that have access to folks that are at this level, who are potentially struggling, but also are looking for that help, and they want to improve. So that's new for me, is getting into those communities, working with those different groups and associations. And again, these are not, colleges where we have degrees and certifications, as you mentioned. These are really community-based organizations that are offering training and helping these folks find jobs, and,
Yeah.
better their lives from a lot of different perspectives. And that's where, we can send them our jobs, where I have one of my leaders today is at one of those events where they're talking about resumes and interviewing, and then we're going to do a little job fair afterwards, and identifying that and making sure that we have that. So we're working through that. As a matter of fact, we've got, roles there. We have to go hire, 25 claims processors. Well, let's dedicate 5, 10, 15 of those roles for folks that are coming from those particular programs, right? And working that through, so that we can offer those opportunities. So that is one of the approaches that we're going to be using moving forward more actively, in effort to identify the early talent, or also the talent that needs that work, so that way we can offer
Mhm.
them those opportunities.
As part of that, are you guys starting to think through like metrics on the other side, evaluating, are these employees more loyal? Do they last longer? Do you have better retention with them? Are they, what is the lens that you look through? Because it might be a little different, right? You might say, actually, we didn't keep them all that long, but we
Yeah,
put them out into the market afterwards and they're having a better life. That's still a win
yeah,
for us, right? Like how
yeah,
how does that measurement work for you? I'm just fascinated by this idea that
yeah,
you
exactly. Well,
don't
we're
have to look at
we're
it the same way.
Yeah, so we're early in that, and we've been starting to have some conversations around. All right, I'll give you an example. Monday we have a claims examiner classes where I use that example. And I think we have 8 people who we hire from our partners, our workforce development partners. So the measurement is day 5, day 30, day 90, day 180. Are they still here? So retention is one. Is
Yeah,
just making sure
always.
that they're here and they're staying here. And then it's about, just the quality and their performance. How are they doing? And then once they're here, how do we continue to provide them with the skills that they need to be able to continue to kind of grow, whether they're going vertically or latticing across our organization from workforce, just from a development standpoint as we go through that. So we are really early. We haven't been tracking that, but it's more than just a glimmer in my eye and other people's eye, is that we really want to be able to identify um, once I feel like our job is not done when they start on day one. It's making sure that they're getting the needs that they, in addition to our managers and
Yeah.
and and the folks in the business, just make sure that we have hired the right people and going back and taking a look at that. So we're really early in looking at that. But as part of the plan is, are they staying? That's the first thing, because it's not easy in some of these roles. Are they staying? And then are they actively producing? Are they actively doing a great job? And are we offering those opportunities? So 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, they're going to a supervisor, or maybe they're going to an analyst role or something a little bit different and moving, traversing across our organization in other ways. So we're so early in looking at that, but that's the plan in looking at how we're going to try and make sure that we're using some of these programs to bring folks in these different capacities. Are they staying? Are they producing? Are they performing well? And just making sure that we're looking at those different areas. So we're always looking for stories. One of the things we're doing is we're looking for those stories of those individuals that were able to progress and do a great job here. So we're still on that journey of figuring that out.
Looking for your next HR technology role? Go to your browser, type in hrtechjob.com, and browse hundreds of jobs with the best HR technology vendors. HR tech professionals finally have a dedicated job marketplace to find work or be found. Sign up for job alerts or post a resume. Discover jobs with companies like Workday, Phenom, HiBob, Deal, and more. You'll even find HR tech roles with employers in case you want to work with managing HCM or HRIS platforms. HR Tech Job, the only job market for HR technology careers. Join us at hrtechjob.com.
Really love the empathy lens. And when you think about weaving in automation as part of the recruitment process, and striking that human-centric balance, particularly with this empathy component, curious as to how you are weaving that into the candidate experience beyond just how you're assessing and interviewing the talent, and if recruiters have actual KPIs around their role in that candidate experience.
So first part of the question was automation, right? In terms of so right now from a technology standpoint, we're still on some kind of legacy systems from that standpoint. So we haven't introduced much automation. We do video interview, and we do one-way video interview. That's probably the essence of the automation that we have at the moment. So we're not really using much of that. So we're still doing old-fashioned interviews and working through all those things from an assessment standpoint. So nothing there that we're doing that is kind of out there from that standpoint. But in terms of measurements, matter of fact, one of the things I was just working on before I jumped on the call is our goals. We're about to roll out our goals and objectives for our recruiters. And that's one of the things working through right now is, I think recruiters need to find them, assess them, close them, right, from that standpoint. But I think we also need to look at things like promotion rates and I don't want to do attrition. So I'm struggling with it at the moment. Like, is it attrition or is it promotion rates or someone who lasts longer than, they still here a year later? So Heidi, to that point, I'm still working through some of that, but I want to focus on, did we hire the right people? And I really want my recruiters to be subject matter experts. I prefer they be better at assessing the candidates than our managers. Right. So I'm working through how do I we do that? So anybody's any ideas, I'm open to it and listening, but I'm working through a successful recruiter should know a great candidate when they see it, be able to get them into the organization, find them, assess them, close them, but then also make sure that those folks are staying, getting promoted, and moving throughout the organization. So we have some of those stories to tell. So I'm working on that I'm working on that right now currently. I'll probably get back to it when we get off the phone here, but it's something that I'm working on to try and figure that out.
How do you tie? Oh, go ahead, Heidi. I was going to jump in and add your question, the rest of your question. How do you tie this lens of empathy into those metrics? Like, how are you making sure that while your recruiters are hitting those really key elements of their role, that they're also doing it with a high degree of empathy and this lens that is so important to AmeriHealth as part of the mission?
Yeah, I think um, as candidates are going through their journey, um, I think that is really, really important. And sometimes as recruiters, we do lose this. Or I just hired somebody and hopefully they'll start, right? And there's that time and that communication and that cadence that you go through after somebody starts as we go through that. So from an empathy standpoint, also trying to encourage our teams to stay in touch and to get to know your candidates and build those relationships. So I want to make sure that our recruiters are building those good, strong, trusted relationships with their candidates, right? So one of the things that we just did, I don't know if I can mention a product, but we're using Phenom here, and we're using drip campaigns to help with that, right? So there's a little bit of automation from that standpoint. But Heidi, to your point, I expect the recruiters to contact those candidates, right? And be staying in touch with them that whole time as they go through that. And in a high volume environment, we do a lot of high volume hiring where a recruiter might hire 25, 30 people to do a class. That sometimes is difficult to do, but I am trying to hold them accountable for making sure that they're staying in touch, that you're not surprised if somebody ghosts you on day one as we go through that. So again, not sure if I've answered the question, but that's something from an empathy standpoint is the candidate experience. We actually did the Candy Awards last year. I was surprised we actually were in the top 40 somehow, some way. We did actually
My
really, really
friend,
well.
my friend
And
Kevin is beaming.
Kevin, yes.
He's
And so
beaming over in
we're gonna,
California.
yeah, and I just wanted to get a baseline for where we were, which was another indication in terms of the empathy. We're doing something right there, but I couldn't pinpoint it because we did it in August. I was only here for like 3 months. But now I'm definitely going to be able to go dig into some of those things and figure that out. So that's the best way I can answer your question about empathy, Leah, is the communication, it's the cadence,
Yeah.
it's getting to know those candidates, building those trusted relationships from that standpoint.
Yeah, I think measuring is always the hard one there. It's interesting. At the end of last year, the data said we had 2 million unfulfilled jobs in the US based on the number of humans available to do the work, given labor participation and blah, 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 blah. That for me, that means today's no, it could be tomorrow's yes. That's how I see all of these candidate experiences at this point in time. And so, the measurement of empathy is that something as simple as like someone we said no to that re-engaged with us later, or that there's some really interesting things that from this kind of metric, which is very different than a normal business, like what's your time to fill, how many touches, how many offers, what's your offer acceptance rate, right?
Yep.
All of which are probably key metrics that you're using, but not necessarily really getting into, I think, what Heidi's asking, which is how do we really measure these soft skills that are hard to measure, but really important for candidate experience as a general statement, but even more maybe in your world. So
Yeah, exactly.
I feel like this is like a stay tuned question. I want to hear what you end up with.
Yeah, it is. And just one added dimension and if there's anyone on the phone that's done this, is we want to start doing the surveys and NPS scores. So looking at a variety of different dimensions, like for example, obviously hiring manager, candidates, recruiters, right? As we go through all of that. So that's going to be potentially another outside way of looking at empathy. If a candidate rates a recruiter really well and they feel like they have a good relationship, that might be another way that you can quantify that. Although it's not perfect, it's another way potentially how you can quantify it. But yeah, it's not an exact science.
I have nothing for you. I'm so sorry. I don't have the science
that's
either.
art. Yeah, it's art.
It is art, right? But there's got to be metrics behind art too, I guess, right? How much did the painting sell for? So you're now thinking around your recruiting team. You've got some things in place. You're definitely making progress on your EVP. Um, where do you go? Like, what's the next big initiative to think through as you, and that might be a personal initiative for you because you're on your own journey through all of this, right?
Yeah.
Or is it a business initiative that's next after you sort of get through these big pieces that you've got in front of you right now?
Yeah, I think as part of that journey, just for me is making sure that I understand our business, which means getting out there, right, and participating and seeing what's happening with our members and those kinds of things. So another thing that drove home the mission kind of focus on our organization is, and maybe a lot of other companies have this here, but it's one of our strategic business goals is that every single person need what they call our care crew, which you need to go and spend time outside the office with a we have a community investment team that's out there doing events, those kinds of things. So I'll share, I'm a huge basketball. I coached and youth and all those things. So we have a program called Healthy Hoops. So I love that. So we a whole day with a bunch of kids, doing drills and skills and those kinds of things. And these are potentially folks who are members. And oh my God, that experience alone, you go help them with that. And then also you teach them about asthma, right? So and that one I went to is about asthma as we go through that. So that's part of that personal journey that I'm on, Leah, in terms of working through all those things. But I think the next big chunk for us is really thinking about, and I'm sure if we talk about workforce development and workforce planning, that is probably the next big thing for us is looking at the skills that we need, the leadership that we need, and making sure that we can start to think about proactively in making sure that we know what the gap is and what we need
Yeah.
and working through that. So again, not rocket science. This is basic blocking and tackling for us, but it's something that our maturity is not where it necessarily needs to be. We've just hired a new VP of talent management. That's what he's here to go do. We'll be able to fill in the gaps whether it's succession planning, leadership development, or that workforce planning is how can TA support that through early careers, through executive search, through making sure that we are proactively in the marketplaces and cultivating the talent that we need as we build the organization. This year's going to be a little tough for us. Just based on what's happening in the healthcare environment with redetermination and Medicaid and those kinds of things. But 2025, 2026, oh my God, it's going to be very different, and we have to be ready. So that's the other big thing that we're starting to work through is understanding what are the skill gaps that we're going to have, and then how can we as a talent acquisition organization make sure that we can start to help fill in some of those gaps.
How much of that is really sitting on your desk, on your leaders' desks in talent acquisition versus really trickling through to the culture and how um, the team recruits and thinks about talent and who they're bringing in?
Yeah, no, it is I'll call it a shared responsibility across the business. My peers, from an HR perspective, as we look at that. So I think it's really important that we again are looking at that as a shared responsibility as we go through, because we've gone through explosive growth here. And we did what we had to go do. We've averaged about 4,000 hires a year for the last couple of years. We're now up to 10,000 people. And when you're growing that fast, it's just get it done. And
Yeah.
now things have slowed down a bit. Now it's that opportunity for us to take that step back, really start doing some of that purposeful planning as we go through that. So that's, again, part of that journey that we're on now is taking a look at the efficiency from an operational standpoint, which includes looking at talent and making sure that do we have the right talent here, and then what skills are we missing as we go forward. But it's definitely a shared responsibility across our business leaders, obviously our HR organizations, so that we can help fill in those gaps.
So I'm sorry, I'm going to step back for a second. In your personal journey, you were talking about your involvement in the community. How does AmeriHealth support that in their mission to support their employees in general? Is that part of the EVP that you guys are promoting, or is that more of a personal mission for you?
No, I wouldn't necessarily. It is a defined goal and there's two. One is you have to put in a certain amount of hours and you are given the time to go do that. And probably once a week, I'll get a message from our community investment team, and here are the volunteer opportunities that are available. Go sign up for one. And we measure that. I'll get a report once a quarter, like where is everybody at from an hours perspective. The other thing that was unique, and I'm not sure if other organizations have this, but we have the opportunity to fund charities. That's actually taken right out of our paychecks. So we can identify X amount of dollars and identify a charity, hundreds and hundreds of them, or we could pick the one maybe that you're the most proud of or the one that you support as you go through that. And again, there's goal, there's an alignment to that in terms of making sure that, especially from a senior leadership perspective, that we are investing back in the community with our own money. So those are a couple things that we're doing from that standpoint, and it was just something I'd never experienced in my own area. So you write a check for something, right, as you go through it, but now I see every paycheck. I see the money going out, and it's going to an organization that I support, and working through that in that way. In addition to just my time, I'm also have a financial investment, and it's something that I'm really proud of, and glad to do from that standpoint. So it's not only just your time, we also have the opportunity to invest financially in those things. And again, we've got mechanisms to make it really, really easy to go do.
So it sounds like, sort of taking 6 steps back here, you said, the company's done not yet a great job at telling the mission, telling the story. But as we're talking, I'm hearing all of these little component parts of the things the business is already doing well and has already put in place that's unique and really helps drive that story. And you just I feel like you get to be the storyteller as opposed to a story creator. And I think that's an important distinction, right? You're not creating an EVP by first having to create these activities in the business to tell about, right?
They're there.
You're there. You're more like on a discovery of what are they all? Have I even found them all yet?
Exactly.
And now,
exactly.
how do
And
I
we
turn
have
that
to,
into a story?
yeah, we have to find ways to tease that out so that way we can promote it, because it's here. It's here every day. We live it every day. It's here. So that it's part. I'm excited because there's so much good stuff to tell, but frustrated that we haven't done it yet, or we're trying to find mechanisms to go do that. And I think, as I mentioned earlier, we grew so fast over the last 2 or 3 years that we forgot to start to tell those stories and elevate those stories as we go through. So that's really what I think we're going to do. The EVP work that we're going to be doing today is exactly that, is teasing this out so that way we can build assets, whether it's our website, it's different ways that we communicate, the tone that we use to communicate how we're doing, whether it's internal, right, or with our internal employees, or externally as we're working through all of that. But yeah, it's a discovery process because there's so many great things that are here, and we need to start shouting about it.
How, or are you even thinking yet about how you operationalize this EVP once you've got it? How you train everyone to be using some of the same, like for example, I'm catching, because you use the word members, and I know you use it very specifically. It's not customers, right? You have members. There's this language training that comes along with something like this. Do you guys have a plan yet? Or are you thinking about a plan yet around how you operationalize that? And then how do you measure the team's success at adopting and promoting this new storytelling methodology, right? For your TA. And then how do you measure long-term its impact on the business? Is it the retention rates? Is it the promotion rates? Is it the hiring velocity, which is like one of my new favorite terms? It's not a new term.
Right?
It's just new to me. It's just new to me. What is the mechanism you're thinking about that will really help you understand that we've done a good job so far in this part of the exercise?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of those. So one, we haven't figured that out yet. One, because we're still early in that journey of redefining what our EVP is and what the assets are that we're going to be developing as we go through that. But to your point, a lot of those things are going to become important metrics: the speed at which we hire, the retention rates, right? The productivity, people that get promoted. I think those are all going to be some of the things that we'll look to measure. So we haven't defined any of those yet. So we need to do the first step, which is to build the EVP, make sure that we've got that right, that we're using the right tone, we're using the right messaging, and then building the assets. Like from a TA perspective, I'm looking at like how do we build assets to tell our stories? Is it videos? Is it published stories? Is it news feeds, from a social media standpoint and working through those. And then what I can do from that is measure our team in terms of their engagement with those assets and leveraging them to promote and attract people in the organization. So again, that's where some of the tools and some of the vendors that we have, I think, are going to be so important for us to be able to help with that. So I'm trying to baseline everything that we're doing, whether it's time to fill or the velocity in terms of where they were feeling, how long recs have been open, and then looking at ways when we make these changes and we affect these changes, how does that increase, decrease some of those key metrics as we're going through some of those? But it will be some of those traditional metrics that we have in TA. The biggest thing I'm working on right now is speed. Speed and velocity is one of the big things when I got here. Build TA is too slow. And we're kind of working through, that element of things. But I think definitely once we start to build the EVP and the messaging and get that out, and then start to have some of those assets there, that will help in looking at some of those metrics and figuring out, the impact of those.
That I feel like is a really interesting sort of juxtaposition to the high empathy, high touch, right? Those almost run a counter to each other. You're looking at the world through the lens, or at least short term. I actually wonder maybe long term if they are not, but short term, recruiters go faster, recruiters hire faster, recruiters touch every candidate, make sure you're staying engaged, recruiters make sure you have drip campaigns and personalized messaging and make sure you have high empathy. Like, ooh, that's tough.
Yeah, welcome to my world, because I came into this role thinking about all the traditional TA metrics and working through those things. And I run into mission, members, and making sure that we're focusing on that. So yeah, that's why I don't sleep at night, right? No, I'm not kidding. But that's what I'm. On one hand, I want to make sure that we've operationalized, we have an efficient TA organization, we're seen as experts. But at the same point, I'm drawn towards how what we do every single day impacts the members and the things that we're doing and our mission. So I'm trying to be patient. It's not been easy. I've tried to be patient in managing, kind of those two areas, so that way we're delivering on our mission, but also we've got a good, efficient TA team and products and services that we can offer to our businesses.
Well, it is interesting, right? Because you said you applied for and were acknowledged for one of the Candy Awards, which is actually really amazing, right? Because I get like the little side view of all of this, and Kevin's telling me how many people applied, and he's so excited, and how many entries are on, and so forth. But you're already baselining from a pretty good place from a candidate engagement and candidate experience perspective, and my understanding is that the number one driver in all of that is communication, right? Candidates rate almost everybody on their communication. And are you actively communicating? Are you being proactive and hitting deadlines that you set, and so forth and so on? So from a baseline, it sounds like you guys already have like a good place to grow from. So as you move forward, is one of the simple goals like, let's do better than top 40? Let's make top 20? Is it that simple, or is it more nuanced where you are saying we want to see a X amount percentage increase in velocity, but also maintain where we're at from a candidate communication? It's an interesting question, right? Yeah. I don't know if you have an answer.
I don't have an answer, but my reaction to it is I have no idea how we got into the top 40. No idea. I don't know, but we're doing something right. And what I think we're going to try and identify here is through leveraging some of our products and vendors, as well as, emphasizing culturally what we want to do with our TA teams and engaging, is when we do the next one, and having put in some things in that we're starting to put in, how do we get inside the top 25? I don't have a goal. I don't necessarily have a goal. I just want to do better than we did last year, because I think we put a few things in place that will hopefully help that. And that way, I really want to be able to identify what are some of those key things that we put in place to impact that. So it's a great measuring stick. I had no idea how we got into the top 40 last year.
Well,
But this year, if
congratulations.
we do
So,
better,
Bill, I want to jump in and just reflect a few things back at you. So I'll start with a story from this week. I was in Vegas at Transform and was sitting in a session yesterday talking about the ROI of talent acquisition. And one of the things that we talked about in this roundtable was part of the ROI is just simply thinking about the impact that recruiting has on the company. So like flip ROI around, you talk about it as impact of recruiting, kind of turn ROI on its head. Your people in your TA team were hired to join your TA team inside of your company. And they were hired through the lens of, will they bring empathy? Will they bring the service that your organization is bringing? That bleeds through into those interactions. Like you're in the top 40 because you actually are already living the mission as an organization. And consequently, I'm sure that your recruiting teams treat the candidates well when they're interacting with them. It's not to say that it's perfect and that there isn't room for improvement for sure, but like just from your baseline, you have to actually be living that because that's how you guys approach your entire existence. And we have a saying that we love to I guess we didn't come up with it, I don't think at all. We like to use a lot. Like you are who you hire, right? Your organization is literally the outcome of your hiring activities. That's why it's such an important, if not really, I think it's the most important thing because everything that happens afterwards is based on who you actually hired.
yeah, yeah. And to that point, Alex, the team that I have here inherited a lot of it is average tenures 8 years here with America, and average recruiting experience is probably pushing 20 years. So to your point, you're right. They're doing something right. Now, I'd like them to use the technology better and the tools that we have and utilization and those kinds of things. But at the end of the day, we hired 4,000 people last year. We know we're doing something right, and as we go through that, so you are exactly right, exactly right.
Yeah, the tool will just make them better. That's all.
Exactly. Right.
One of my
And as a
favorite.
technologist and those kinds of things, I want to make sure that we're upskilling and making sure that we are enabling our recruiters with some of these tools and technologies as we go through that. But they're already good at what they do, because they know the roles, they know the businesses as they go through that. So you're exactly right.
One of my favorite advertising campaigns of the 2000s, I know I'm old, was that Sherm and our friend's Monster stuck on the mirrors of every bathroom. Who you hire is a reflection of yourself. Like you guys just nailed it without trying, right? And that's
Yeah.
I think I would agree with Alex. Like how did you? I don't know why we won. Well, we won because 8 years ago we hired really great TA people.
Exactly.
Right, who've embodied the
Tenure average
mission.
is impressive.
And so now it's just a matter of taking their 8 years and their embodiment of the mission and helping them, right, shout it from the rooftops and get the hiring managers to also reflect that and so forth and so on. And 4,000 people is a lot of people. And this year, I'm guessing you're looking to at least do the same.
Now this year will be down. Yeah, this year it's going to be less because we were in that kind of that trajectory. This year, if you're reading anything about healthcare and Medicaid, it's going to be a tough year. So this year we have to get better and optimize and do all those things because we're not going to be hiring as many people. My budget's not going to be as big as it was last year. So we have to figure out how to be operational efficiently and use some of the tools that we have from that standpoint. So that's this year, but I'm very optimistic as we get to 25, 26, it'll be much better. So yeah, we're going to have to grind it out this year.
I have a saying that I stole from someone else, right? Never waste a good crisis. Like this is your crisis year. Don't waste it, right?
Exactly right.
Use it for the operational efficiency. I like that. Anyway, I know you have a very hard stop and you have to physically move locations for a meeting. So I'm going to let us wrap up a little early today, even though we usually go straight to the hour. But I wanted to start by saying thank you for joining us today. I really appreciate your time and your passion, which for anybody who's watching the video is like you're exuding
Thank you.
how excited you are about this opportunity. And I love that.
No,
So
thank you. And I appreciate it. This is, for me, obviously a chance to talk about what we're doing, but it's also very therapeutic, right?
yeah.
So thank you for allowing me to go through this. So thank you very
Yeah.
much. I appreciate it.
No, likewise. Thank you so much. And thank you to everybody who joined us today. I appreciate everyone's time. So have a great morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are. And we'll see you next time. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye now.
Thanks, Bill. Bye.